Welcome into the Fantasy Alarm MLB DFS live show here for you. We got Colby Conway and myself, Dan Servodidio, filling in for John and Pemba and James Grande on this Friday night. John is getting married on Saturday, so we are here filling in for him. So congrats to him. But Colby, how are you doing, man? You ready for some MLB DFS talk tonight?
Yep, absolutely. Got to say congrats to John. I gave him a good piece of advice here today as I was talking to him a little about some content for tomorrow. When I got married, I was told don't lock your knees up front. When you're standing up there, don't lock the knees. And I just relayed that on, and he said he was going to keep it loose. So congrats to him. We're going to fill in for these two, have a little fun talking some MLB DFS content here for this Friday evening.
Yeah, I recently got married as well back in September, and the big thing was like, stay hydrated, don't lock your knees, make sure you're not passing out, don't go a little too crazy with the alcohol content or anything. So
at least beforehand.
Yeah, beforehand for sure. But anyway, so we were talking Friday night MLB DFS here. You can see on your screen the DraftKings breakdown here. That's what we'll be focusing on. But if you're playing on FanDuel, it's definitely keep in mind all those games. But, DraftKings 13-game slate here. Tonight is an interesting slate. We got Coors on the slate. We got the Phillies at the Rockies at Coors. So that's obviously one of the higher over-unders at 11. But tied for them for the top high-scoring game tonight is the Red Sox and Cardinals at 11. So that'll be a game we'll be talking about for sure. Some of the other top over-unders tonight, we got Giants Diamondbacks at 10. So that's a good total. Padres Dodgers, and Pirates Orioles both at 9 total runs. So if you're looking to stack or just pitchers maybe to fade, that's for sure there. The top favorites, by the way, for pitchers, we'll get into pitchers real quickly here, but the top favorites, if you're looking at some of these starters, the Brewers with Corbin Burns are minus 255, so they're a hefty favorite. The big ones, the Yankees at minus 180 with Garrett Cole, and the Texas Rangers at minus 170. So that's where we're looking there. Let's just dive right into pitchers. And by the way, if you're watching us live, YouTube, Better Sports Network app, Twitter, wherever you're watching us, make sure you're sending in those questions because we'll be answering them live throughout the show. Me and Colby will be definitely helping you guys build some lineups here. So let's just start with pitchers here, Colby. First, indications of the slate where you're leaning for like a top pitcher. You just kind of locking in one of these top guys like Garrett Cole or Spencer Strider's right there too.
Yeah, I know if you were listening to the morning edition with John and James, they were kind of talking about I don't want to call it like a conundrum per se with pitching, but you can go a lot of different avenues. Like Spencer Strider, obviously he can strike out anybody. Do you willingly want to go at Toronto? Typically, it's something I don't really like to do more often than not because that offense can erupt really at any point in time. So Strider's there in consideration. I don't know if I'm quite ready to go with him for the sake of the lineup here. Garrett Cole's fine. You can beat Tampa Bay. And last time he was out, it was really only one bad inning. Corbin Burns is the interesting one to me because he's an elite arm, even though we haven't quite seen it this year. And you just talked about them being heavy favorites going up against Kansas City. And when you look at really this Kansas City offense, about 2 weeks ago, we would be locking in Burns and we'd probably already be moving on to the SP2. But Kansas City's offense has actually been kind of good of late. And it's a little bit worrisome here with Burns, who hasn't necessarily been at the top of his game this season. But go ahead and click on Corbin Burns quick, because the interesting thing here, and then go to his game log. So when we look at it here, he has been better of late. Now, listen, 15 and 21 from Corbin Burns aren't exactly the numbers that we're hoping for, but still for the year, I mean, Kansas City does have the 8th highest strikeout rate and just an 82 WRC plus against righty. So you can beat this lineup. And really, Burns has had 2 very bad starts this year. And when you kind of look at his numbers here, take out those first 2 starts of the year, 2.08 ERA, that sounds great. The 7.7 K per 9 leaves a little bit to be desired. But Burns, I think of these top guys for a point per dollar basis from I'm expecting tonight, he just might be the one I'm most intrigued by, to be honest. And again, like you said, heavy favorites, good chance for the win, and that's where we get to rack up the points.
Yeah, the thing with Burns that's interesting, and you're looking at these game logs, is his walks have been kind of an issue, and especially compared to like his K per walk rate. I mean, this is a guy that, and like last game, he faced a strikeout prone Giants lineup, and only had 5 Ks, and that was one of his starts that he kind of struggled with. Only 2 earned runs, but still, 3 walks compared to 5 strikeouts against a Giants lineup that opposing pitchers, it can rack up like 7, 8, 9 strikeouts against. So that's a little bit of a worry. That the walks in general, just the control. I mean, that's if you're locking in like a high priced pitcher like him, and you might walk almost as much as he's going to strike out. I'm kind of leaning away from that.
Yeah, and that's the thing. What's going to come down to, like, it depends how you like to attack like builds. Do you prefer like splits righty lefty for the season? Do you look at the last 2 weeks? Because for the year, I've picked on Kansas City in these PrizePicks things that we've done.
Yeah,
because they
underdog articles for me.
Yeah, they swing at everything. Like, they are there to swing. The last 2 weeks, it's worked out, and they're actually walking a little bit. But for the most part this year against righties, a lot of strikeouts, not a lot of walks. So you got to think Burns is in a good spot. Vegas clearly likes at least the Brewers in this matchup. It could just be with their offense going against Kansas City. But of those top guys, I think when you look at it, to save $3,000 from Strider and about 2,800 from Garrett Cole, that's going to open a lot, because I know from the builds that I've done on DraftKings here, I have a lot of money going to hitting. I love the offensive side of the slate tonight, whereas pitching, I'm really only looking at a couple guys. And of the top ones, I think Burns is the one I like the most.
Okay. And by the way, if you are subscribed to Fantasy Alarm All Pro, you've already checked out probably the MLB DFS playbook. But if you haven't, go check that out. And by the way, you can get All Pro access to Fantasy Alarm and unlock all our features, including all fantasy football and betting content, plus our award-winning DFS playbook that I just mentioned, covering 10 different sports for a limited time. Get all this 50% off for the next 6 months with promo code ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. And so get started with your free trial today. That's promo code ALARM50 at fantasyalarm.com. And in that playbook, this was Henry Wilson today covering the playbook, and his among his top options for strikeouts, he's got Strider, of course, he's got Garrett Cole, and he's got Mackenzie Gore against the Mets as one of his top 3, and sandwiched in there with Sonny Gray. And when you look at it on DraftKings, Gore is significantly cheaper than some of those top guys you were mentioning. So, when you're looking at a little bit farther down for pitchers, is that one of the names you are looking for if you're not going with one of these top guys or any of these other mid-range guys? Where are you leaning?
Gore is the guy. He is the one. He's actually the first thing on my notes I got here for pitcher. I have Strider listed first, but that's just because he's the most expensive. And actually the second one I have is Mackenzie Gore. He terrorized this Mets lineup the last time that he was out. I believe it was 10 strikeouts against the Mets. Pull up that game log.
Yeah, 10.
It was 10. So crushed them. So I expect him to do that again. And this Mets offense, I don't know if Ronis is listening. I know he fancies the Mets. They look bad. Like, they are reeling right now. Maybe not quite as bad as like a Minnesota lineup that's struggling, but the Mets have not looked good. Mackenzie Gore has the stuff. He has been better on the road than at home. So, I mean, you got to look at that. But there is strikeout potential here. And kind of similar to Burns, we could be getting elite numbers at not quite an elite price. And I think that's going to open the door for the lineup. So we're only talking about a $500 difference dropping down to Gore from Burns. Could you go Burns and Gore with pitchers? Sure. There's other value options that I think you really, really, really need to consider. But if you don't want the likes of a Strider or a Garrett Cole, I think you have to look at Corbin Burns or Mackenzie Gore.
Okay. And by the way, we got James Grande chiming in on the chat here. Says he's stuck in awful Boston traffic. What an awful state, in parentheses. Who do I play tonight, Gurus? Well, we're playing Mackenzie Gore, according to Colby Conway here. So, good luck in that traffic. Glad I'm not sitting in that right now. But yeah, send in your questions, as we were saying. We'll be answering them. All right. So Gore is one of the top plays here, pitcher. Where else are you looking in this mid-range? Any mid-range pitchers before we get to some value guys?
I think I'm obligated to say Martin Perez because, hashtag anybody against Oakland kind of
Yeah.
tends to work out more often than not. So I'm not doing it personally. I'm going up for Gore, I'm going up for Burns, or I'm dropping down. The outside of that mid tier, I'm calling it a trap. There's nothing that I really like there. I'm going way down, and I'm talking way down there. I think you
Okay.
have to like Tyler Anderson tonight. I mean, I just talked about how bad the Mets offense was. The way the Cleveland offense is right now, they make the Mets look like one of the best offenses in baseball. Anderson, very good last year. And when you look at his last two starts there, so sure, he does get Milwaukee, one of the worst noted teams against left-handers this season. But Texas has been very, very good against lefties. And we're going to talk about them a lot coming up here in a little bit on the offensive side. But when you look at Anderson, 5,500 going up against a Cleveland offense that's hitting 199 with a 49 WRC plus over the last 2 weeks, they only have a handful more hits than you and I do, Servo, over the last couple weeks. Like, it's bad. This lineup is reeling. They are struggling. And Anderson, as much as I've talked about how much I love the offensive side here, I want to get quite a few hitters that are 4,000, 4,500, 5,000 and up. And Anderson's going to allow me to do that. So Anderson, I think right now, when it comes back to the end of this, when we're actually making the lineup, it's going to ultimately come down to Burns or Gore. And as long as you kind of let me have my way with this one, Anderson's going to be the SP2. I think the value is just too good, and it's going to open up so many options with the offensive players we want to get.
I do like that savings there. I mean, yeah, Anderson's a guy that's like, every year we get players who might have had a breakout year the year prior or 2 years prior, and it's like, all right, can they replicate it? And Anderson's been very hit or miss and started this season bad. But, if he has an outing, like you said, against the Brewers where he's going to give you 20-plus DraftKings points, then, yeah, sign me up for under 6K as my SP2,
And the thing with Cleveland, I'll chime this in here quick too, is as bad as they've been, the big thing with Cleveland, and sometimes the tough thing about going at them in DFS is that they don't necessarily strike out a ton, but with how bad they've been over the last 2 weeks, they do have the 10th highest strikeout rate. So Anderson's not going to be a guy that gets double-digit strikeouts. That's not what I'm saying. But I mean, a quality start, a win with 5, 6, 7 strikeouts, I think that's doable against this putrid Cleveland lineup of late.
Yeah. All right. Any other cheap pitchers before we move on to catcher and get into some hitters here?
I mean, I wish we had Yuri Perez on the slate. I would love to take advantage of his debut tonight, but DraftKings didn't want to give it to us. I understand. I get it. But outside of that, not really, to be honest. I've really honed in on one of those top options and then either looking at that Burns or Gore, and then Tyler Anderson's the only value guy I'm even really considering tonight. Does Henry have any value options? I'm looking at it here in the playbook, and he's kind of in the same type tier, at least on FanDuel. DraftKings, JP France, I get it. Chicago stinks. I can get on board with that one, but I'd rather just drop down to Anderson, but I could get on board with France.
Yeah, I mean, the one guy he mentions, and also Justin Vreeland in the Value Plays article also said was Logan Allen as an option. I mean, like the Guardians, it's a risky play, obviously, but he is cheap enough that he could be an option. And on the other side of that matchup you were just talking about,
I feel like I just trashed them so much. I can't kind of go to the pitcher now. All I've done is basically say their offense couldn't hit water if they were stuck in the middle of the ocean right now. So I can see it. I can see the pathway to it, but I've already conjured up this story in my head that Anderson's going to go out there and shove with a quality start and a win. So I've really put my foot down there.
That's fair. Well, if anything, maybe you could look at the under in that game if you're looking to lay some bets on that game. If both offenses might have a little issues, and especially Cleveland for that matter. All right, well, let's get into some hitters here. And as James Grande is saying in the chat, how many Pirates is too many Pirates? We'll see how many Pirates Colby is going to suggest here as we roll through these hitters. Catcher, where are you going here? You got Realmuto and the Phillies offense in cores, so it's obviously always a place that people will look at. But Will Smith also in one of those higher total games. Where are you looking? Are you looking at these top catchers at all, or are you a guy that usually likes to pay down and save some money at catcher?
In a slate like this, being in Coors, Real Muto and Elias Diaz are going to have ownership. That's just kind of the nature of the beast when Coors is involved. I do like Real Muto. He's been decent of late. If you're not full bore on the on the Colorado stack, I really like Will Smith. Been very good. If you're paying up for catcher, that's not the route I would necessarily go tonight with kind of how my builds have turned out here. But when you look at Will Smith, he's got a 430 WOBA versus lefties. Blake Snell has not been good on the road, and Smith is hot right now. Like if you pull up his game log, we're talking a 680 slug over his last 7, and I do believe he's homered in back-to-back games. Yes.
Yeah.
So back-to-back homers. Dodgers have had their issues against lefties. I know James and John talked about it a good bit this morning. So Snell actually could be an intriguing pitcher if you want to go there. But for a similar price, I'm still looking at Mackenzie Gore there. But of the high-priced options, I think Smith and Real Muto are really the only two that you can consider. I would love, and I mean love, to play Adley Rutschman tonight because Oviedo for Pittsburgh, and we're going to talk about a Pirate here, has been really bad over the last couple of starts. I wasn't buying how good he was doing, and over his last 3 starts, it's been left-handed hitters that have crushed him. I would love to put Rutschman in. I think a Baltimore stack could be very sneaky and low-owned tonight just because they haven't necessarily been tearing the cover off the baseball, but I guess you could look Rutschman 2 for 6 over his last 2. He's putting up decent numbers. I still prefer Real Muto and Will Smith to him. But if you do want to get contrarian, I don't know how much ownership is going to be like in a Baltimore stack. Just because, again, while it is a good matchup, they haven't been as dominant of late as we really would like to see when going after those stacks.
Okay. Henry Wilson in the DFS playbook has 2 guys that are a little priced, just a touch down from this top tier, this core plays, and that's Wilson Contreras, Wilson Contreras for St. Louis, not the other Contreras, and Jonah Heim for Texas. So the guys are, if you're looking to pay a little bit further down, those are some catchers that Henry Wilson was suggesting. Are you looking at either of those or any in this, mid tier below Rutschman Diaz range?
With the way my builds have gone, Heim has been the catcher I put in. He's got a great matchup against a bad lefty. If you saw the PrizePicks video I put out today, I have Ken Waldichuk allowing more than 5.5 hits as one of my top plays of the day. Texas hits lefties very well. Jonah Heim just might hit lefties even better, and Waldichuk is bad against really most hitters. So Heim has been very good. I do love to play him when facing left-handed pitching, and I do expect Texas to score a lot. So I do think he's going to come up to the dish with multiple runners on base. I'm very excited for that. And really, Heim's the guy I've looked at because I think I can get top-tier production from him without having to pay up for the likes of Real Muto, Will Smith, or even Adley Rutschman if you want to go that route. So really, when you look at the 2 catchers that Henry talked about, those are 2 games that just might be, outside of Colorado, the most popular stacks, right? With Wainwright versus the Big Maple, James Paxton, and then Texas and Oakland, mainly Texas versus Waldichuk. That's what we're looking at here. Like you can sell me on a game stack with St. Louis, Boston. The Texas Oakland game is a Texas stack. That's 100% what that is.
Yeah. Well, on that note, we got Justin Vreeland in the Value Plays article suggesting an Oakland catcher for tonight. That was Carlos Perez, 2,300 on DraftKings here. Very cheap. So you're looking at him as a possible punt or any of these other cheap catchers for lineups.
Yeah, I haven't gotten too past the Jonah Heim. I'm looking at what he wrote about, what Vreeland wrote about in the Value Plays article, and I get it. It's one of those things we talked about. Like same thing with Jonah Heim. Hits lefties very well. What does Perez do? Hits lefties very well. He's saying he hits 385, 370 OBP, 462 slug, minimum price. The Colorado game is a pain. I'm just going to be honest. Coors Field on the slate is always a pain.
It always is.
Because it's so expensive. Everybody's priced up way more than they need to be. So if you really want to go full bore in that game, which I do like quite a few options in that one, this is going to be an easy way to save some money. Because if you go down to Perez, he was what, 2,500?
23,000. By the way, he's on Oakland now. He was on the Rockies, but
right. No, but I'm saying if you're going to go if you want other hitters in that Colorado game, this is an easy way to save money because even from Jonah Heim, it's like $1,500.
Gotcha.
That's a massive difference. That's pretty much what people are priced up when they go to Colorado anyway. So I can get behind it if we have the money at the end. I would love to look at Heim, and that's probably where I think I'm going to settle in because I'm all in on Texas. I'm really all in on Texas and St. Louis. We just haven't gotten to St. Louis yet.
Yeah. I mean, on the surface, I got Carlos Perez's card pulled up, and of course, he has the Rockies hat on in the picture. So that's you can blame that. But 327 batting average on the season. And as you mentioned, and Justin Real mentions just some better splits against righties. So yeah, like that, or lefties. So that would be, if you're looking for a punt, as you mentioned, get into some Rockies or Phillies guys or Red Sox or Cardinals, then why not go with a punt at catcher? All right, let's move to first base now. Of course, Ohtani, first base eligible in DraftKings, so you always got to mention him. But the top guys, Guerrero, Goldschmidt in that high-scoring Cardinals-Red Sox game, Matt Olson, Pete Alonso, all in that top tier. Who are you looking from there? I'll even throw like Freddie Freeman and CJ Cron in the Coors game in that all top tier range. Who's your favorite pay up at first base?
You had me at Goldie.
Yep.
Simply put, that's the one. He's the one that leads the charge tonight against Paxton. He's just so good against lefties. When you look at his numbers over like the past week or so, it is a bit inflated from that just insane 3 home run game that he had there back against Detroit. So the numbers are a bit inflated from there, but numbers are still good overall of late. And again, we're getting him on the best side of his splits, facing a lefty. Paxton's thrown all but like 21 innings since the end of 2019. So there's going to be some rust. When you look at his starts in the minors coming back, big command issues. So Goldschmidt's a guy, it may end up being a little bit like a 2 for 3 with a double and a walk or 2 type night, but St. Louis is going to put up a ton of runs in this one, and Goldschmidt's going to lead the charge. So Goldschmidt's my top option at first base. I like Matt Olson a good bit. Pete Alonso's fine as well. Obviously, I wouldn't go Alonso if you're going to look at Gore, but Olson's in a good spot as well tonight in that matchup against Chris Bassett, who if I remember correctly, lefties have gotten the best of him a little bit, and he's been swinging the bat well. So if you're paying up, to me, it's Goldschmidt or Olson, and the whole Ohtani at first base thing just I don't think I'll ever be not thrown off when I see him at the top of the pricing every single time.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. Like has he ever played an inning at first base in the major leagues? I don't think so. So like, why is he first base eligible?
No sense.
Yeah, and by the way, on Goldie, so he's the cover of your PrizePicks video today. So if you haven't watched that, go check that out. Colby's got a couple plays there, and that one's free. So go check that out right now as you're watching this. But Goldschmidt, a couple, you look at his game log, and besides that 3 homer game, just has been a little bit down. So maybe that's why he's priced down a little bit than he otherwise could be. So yeah, that's a good price point for just like a top guy. All right, mid range first baseman. If you're looking to pay down a little bit further than Goldschmidt or some of those top guys, who are you looking at?
Yeah, right now, I mean, with the way Christian Walker's seeing the ball, I think you almost have to consider him more often than not. He's been very good. John and James talked about it this morning too. Nathaniel, I want to say it's Lau. Maybe it's Lowe. I don't remember which one it is, but
I think
him
it's Brant
for Texas.
Lau and Nate Lowe.
That's it. Yeah, that might be it. But he's in a good spot too. The power just hasn't been there. But like, if you're going to go Texas stack, like we got hits in the last 5 games, like he's a middle of the order bat for them. You almost have to consider using him. And that's if you are stacking Rangers, that's a very affordable price point for a first baseman. Again, it hasn't been overwhelmingly productive in terms of power, just 4 homers and a 762 OPS. But if you're doing a Texas stack, gosh, he's one that you almost have to look at. And as I've now made it very clear, I do love my Rangers tonight.
All right, yeah, he's a good spot there. Justin Vreeland in the Value Plays article's got Dominic Smith at 2,100 for the Nats as a possible value at first base. Any other values that you like, or Smith one of those as well?
Smith is one. McGill's been so bad against lefties that you almost want to look. You want to look at Smith, and I mean, we got a 3-hit game there. Fantasy points have been pretty good there. Super cheap. It's a decent spot to be in because, like I said, McGill is bad. As I look at it here, I'm trying to pull up what I remember exactly what he did against lefties, but I mean, 288 average and a 349 WOBA this year. So you can definitely get to McGill with lefties. I don't think McGill is good. I'm still upset about a PrizePicks bet that he hurt me on a couple weeks ago. Definitely not holding that against him. But yeah, if you're going to go down there, I really like the Dom Smith call.
Okay, and we got Michael Rojas in the chat on YouTube saying Joey Meneses, 2,700 on DraftKings, first base for the Nats. Is that an option? I mean, he's been on fire too. Double-digit DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 and 7 in the other. So multi-hit games in there. Is he an option?
For sure. I mean, 332 WOBA in the year. He's better against righties than lefties. Hitting 253 at home. It's fine. And again, my Tyler McGill is not good comment still stands. So while lefties maybe have had a little bit more success against him, I do think you can look to a guy like Joey here at first base. And again, super cheap is going to open it up. And it's one of those things too, where you look at it, and if you just have more of a conviction, like I'm just so in on Paul Goldschmidt tonight that it's hard for me to go anywhere else. But if you have a conviction like that at somebody else at a different position where you can't, it's not like FanDuel where you get the util spot. So as much as I love Goldschmidt, we can't agree to both put another first baseman in. If you have that conviction somewhere else, I'm fine with it. Because I mean, over the last 4 games, he's hot. I mean, look at those numbers. The hits are there. And again, Tyler McGill is not good. So I do not mind. I don't mind using him. In terms of like him versus Dom Smith, I just think it comes down to your build a little bit more. Obviously, Smith's a little bit cheaper, but if you are saving up at first base, I don't think you can go wrong with either of these 2 value options.
Yeah, and you kind of have to choose between them because both first base eligible. You can't stack them, unfortunately. And by the way, this is I'll give you a firsthand weather report for the DC area because I'm in Northern Virginia, and it's a humid day. It's very hot here. It wasn't like it felt, it feels like 90 earlier today, and it's been in like the 80s. So it's kind of good hitting weather, and the wind is blowing out a touch at Nats Park. So just those little things, if you're looking as a tiebreaker compared to other value plays, like that definitely puts Smith and Meneses over some other guys. So something to note there. All right, let's go to second base here. Who are your top second baseman pay up options? Marcus Semien in that Texas stack, if you want to go that route. Gleyber Torres up there too. Thairo Estrada will throw in because he's the top priced second baseman and shortstop eligible as well. Any of these top second basemen you looking at?
Semien's one that I do like just because, again, the stack, and he's going to be in a good spot there at the top of the order. So, he's got a couple multi-hit games there in his last 5, so we do like that. I mean, even though he's not a pitcher, anyone against Oakland, if you subscribe by that hashtag, that's not necessarily a bad route to go. John is getting married. I know he's a big Tommy Edman fan whenever you can get him near the top of the lineup. I'm trying to see here if the Cardinals have confirmed the lineup yet, and they haven't. But if Tommy Edman's going to be hitting near the top, I certainly do not mind him.
He's hitting leadoff according to DraftKings here. He's got a 1 next to it. So I think our lineups page on Fantasy Alarm has him hitting leadoff. So.
Well, if that's the case, I mean, he's hitting 375 with a 484 WOBA against lefties. And when you're stacking, I love the guy at the top of the order because he's going to be hitting in front of Goldie and them. So, yeah, I mean, for me, Edman at 4,100 is really, really nice. So he's one we'll definitely be considering come the end of this. Other top options, I do like Marcus Semien just because of the Texas stack. Really, second base is one of the positions here I don't want to say I despise it tonight, but it's definitely one of my least favorite. Like Bryson Stott's going to be owned just because he's simply in Colorado, and I don't really want to go that route, to be honest. So, I think second base is either you're paying up for one of the top options, or you're looking at some value plays and some budget savers at the bottom tier.
Okay. And by the way, the Cardinals lineup I think is out, but it's just not confirmed on the Fantasy Alarm lineups page. I was looking at a different one, but yeah, he is hitting leadoff there.
It might be good.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the stock call for sure because I mean, it'll be interesting to see the Phillies lineup come out because they've been switching that around a little bit, with the offense struggling a little bit. Stott has been leadoff at times, but he's also hitting further down. And I mean, against a lefty and Gomber, Stott a lefty, we'll see if he is still hitting leadoff. We'll see about that, but. So he's an option as always, but any other cheap second baseman here or value plays at second base that you're looking at before we move to third base?
Yeah, 3,300 there. Luis Garcia's actually been pretty good of late. He's got multiple hits in 4 of his last 6. As we see here, it's 3 of his last 5 in the game log that we got there. But I mean, interesting. If you're going to play GPPs and make multiple lineups, I mean, now we've talked about Joey Meneses a little bit. We talked about Garcia here. Maybe a mini Washington stack hasn't exactly been the most profitable this season, since they're like we'll get like 13 hits and maybe scratch across 2 runs, maybe if we're lucky.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, that could be interesting because he's been pretty good of late. Just need to get like some runs scored or something like that to kind of boost those numbers a little bit. And then you can look at Miguel Vargas with the Dodgers. He just gets fantasy points. When he does make contact, it's an extra base hit more often than not. So you like that. He's willing to take a ball 4. Hasn't been great against lefties this season. So that's my only hesitation with using him against Blake Snell. But I mean, when you just look at his last 2 hits have been home runs, and he's really a boomer bust guy. You're almost hoping that you pick him on the night where he gets the home run. But he is seeing the ball well, it seems, because he's like I said, he at least takes ball 4. So he's at least willing to wait it out. And when he does make contact, typically good things happen.
Yeah, I got you there. And by the way, we got Henry Wilson on the DFS playbook. I had Luis Garcia as one of his core plays there if you're looking at in there, and make sure you're checking out his playbook for all the core plays. He's got different tier range, price ranges if you're looking there. But to back up your point about Garcia, he's also looking there as maybe a cheap second base. And by the way, is Andres Jimenez an option? Because that was a player he touched on for the Guardians, and I guess maybe Henry's just really high on the Guardians today. But you were trashing their offense earlier. But is he maybe a one-off from Cleveland that you look at?
You can. I just
hitting 7th. I don't love that.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily like I loved Jimenez coming into the season. Like I'm gonna be blatantly honest. I was loving him coming into the season. Returns haven't been there. I just don't like the price. I think the price is too high because if you go back to the list of second basemen there, like 4,400. You know, I talked about Tommy Edman as a guy like more, and he's $300 cheaper. Like the price is what is kind of keeping me out of the Jimenez pool tonight, to say the least. Like Edman's just better, and I even go down and like Brandon Drury. You could even consider him against lefties. He's typically fine. So there's just other guys cheaper that I would prefer to Jimenez. So he's just I can see the pathway to wanting Jimenez. It's just he hasn't made it any of the builds that I've had tonight.
Gotcha. All right, let's move to third base here. And by the way, if you guys got any lineup questions, want to chime in about anything on the chat, want to give John and Pemba some wedding advice, hit us up in the chat, and we'll answer your questions live in the air on the show. And we got about 30 minutes here, less than 30 minutes here before we wrap up, and we'll try to build a lineup for you guys and get through all the rest of these top plays. But third base. Let's go to third base here. Max Muncy, Jose Ramirez, Rafael Devers, Matt Chapman, all the usual names that you have at the high price third baseman here, and a couple options in games that we're talking about possibly stacking, like Muncy and Devers. Are they at the top of your list? Ryan McCann, obviously in Coors, so he's got to be mentioned too. Who's your top pay up for third base?
I think this is the position I think I might like the least tonight. I hinted at it earlier. There's going to be a position
you didn't like
coming
second base either.
I didn't, but at least I had multiple options there. I literally have 2 that I've really considered at third base tonight. So this is actually probably the most shallow. So I guess this is the one I like. I guess I don't like, to say the least. But for me, of the top tier guys, I think it's Devers. I love stacking St. Louis tonight. Could you bring Devers on the way back going against Wainwright? Sure, Wainwright wasn't overly impressive in his return. Devers hits righties well. Wainwright, I believe, didn't fare quite as well against lefties in his return back. So I think you can do Devers. If I remember correctly, too, when John and James kind of did their lineup this morning, they did look at 2 Boston guys. Both were left-handed hitters, so they're kind of on the same path there, kind of going lefties against Wainwright. So I do, of the top options, it's Rafael Devers for me. The other ones I'm not really looking at all that much. The one that's caught my eye the most, I can get behind Ryan McMahon in Colorado. I get it. I really like Austin Riley against Chris Bassett in Toronto. I think if you want to kind of be a little bit contrarian, go Atlanta stack, you can do that. But if you go down a little bit, I don't actually remember his price off the top of my head, but Josh Jung, again, Ranger, a guy that hits lefties well. He's been very good. 353 average, 487 WOBA against lefties this season. And then tonight they're in Oakland. So again, you can make numbers, tell whatever story you want, right? When you look at it. So if we take only Jung's at bats against lefties and on the road, now I know I'm cutting the sample size pretty good here, but we're talking a 982 OPS and a 389 ISO and for sub 4K. So Josh Jung is he's going to be highly owned tonight. I really think he's going to be high owned just because his prowess against lefties is well documented at this point in the season. And Waldichuk is not a good left-handed pitcher. At least he hasn't been this season. Jung or Devers are probably my top two, with McMahon and Riley kind of in like that tier or two below.
Okay. Yeah, and to speak on your fading Ken Waldichuk, you might have a play in the PrizePicks video on Waldichuk, right? Fading him. So yeah, I think you're high on the Rangers offense to say the least tonight. And Jung, go check out the MLB DFS playbook again, because Jung is in there as a possible value or core play from Henry Wilson. But go check out his explanation of why, and it's probably similar to what Coley was just saying about his splits in that sample size. But I mean, the numbers kind of say the most there, and against a pitcher like Waldichuk. So any other third baseman in the value range that you want to take a dart on before we head over to shortstop?
I mean, I guess maybe you could look at like an Anthony Rendon. He's down there a little bit in terms of pricing. Man, I don't know. Not really, to be honest. I don't think third base is the spot tonight to pay down. Like, I think you're going to look at one of the top options and then maybe go as low as Josh Jung. There's just other positions that have better value options that I think don't hurt your lineup as much. And these are going to be the spots. Like, I think what we're going to see when we go into our lineup build is that by paying down at positions that we can, like catcher, like pitcher, maybe second base, depending what we do there, depending if you call Edman really paying down. But that's going to allow us to not have to pay down at the positions that we don't want to or necessarily can't. Like, I just don't see a path for a value third baseman. I mean, you can try Anthony Rendon. That's just, for me, it's Devers, Jung, or like McMahon and Riley. So I'm pretty committed to paying up at third base tonight, and I think Jung is going to end up being my favorite. This is a tough position for value tonight.
Yeah, fair enough. Top here. Who are you looking at the top here? Wander Franco, he is in the lineup today. So that was an injury we had to watch because he got pulled from Thursday's game. But he is in the lineup. So that's, he's in the player pool now at the top end of shortstop, but obviously going against Garrett Cole. So a little bit tougher matchup there. But him, Trea Turner, and Coors, Bo Bichette against Strider, though. Estrada, as we talked about a little earlier, Anderson, Bobby Witt. Who are these guys in the top range that you're looking at? Not a ton of options, like if we're talking stacks from offenses that we've been talking about, but who are any top shortstops that you're looking at?
Yeah, Trea Turner's got to be one. Very high price because he's in Colorado, but Austin Gomber is not very good. So Turner's going to be a one that you look at. I mean, there's a lot of players in Major League Baseball, right? But few are really safer than Trea Turner. He just always seems to put the bat on the ball. Good things seem to happen. He can get you a stolen base when needed. Would like to see maybe Coors kind of unlocks his high upside that we've seen from other games that he's had. But Turner is obviously one that we're going to have to look at. We're going to have to consider it. If you're stacking that game or just Philly, it's a double negative, but you can't not include Turner.
Yeah.
Like, you have to put him in there. You just have to. That's just the nature of the beast. So other than that, at shortstop, I think this is something I haven't really said at many positions, but I think you can pay down at shortstop tonight. I really think there's a path to doing that. Like, I know James loves his Giant, so you could go up with Tyro Estrada up there up top. I wouldn't mind that. I don't mind looking at Houston bats against Michael Kopech because he's been bad. Dansby Swanson's hitting the cover off the ball, so I certainly like that. But I think at shortstop, I'm going to coin a term they used this morning, but double Ezekiel might be in play. So the first is Ezekiel Duran. We're going to add to that Texas stack. I don't remember his price off the top of my head. Oh, he's right there beneath Ezekiel. Perfect. They're right next to each other. You don't even have to scroll that far now. So it works out perfect. But Duran at 2,800, he's very good against lefties, 357 average and 407 WOBA. I haven't mentioned it yet, but Ken Waldichuk has been bad against right-handed hitters. So we're definitely looking to some of those guys tonight. And then Tovar in Colorado, when you have capable hitters whose price tag isn't absolutely through the roof in cores, it's something you have to consider. I do not like Taijuan Walker. I don't think he's all that good. Of course, he pitched well the last time out when I was stacking against him, and it seemed like everybody was stacking against him his last time out. Now he's got to go to Colorado, and you can really get away with Tovar. This is a very cheap way to get action in cores, and Tovar has the talent. And if I'm not mistaken, Taijuan Walker, yeah, he's got reverse split. So 352 WOBA to righties and OPS above 800 and a 264 average. Lefties have actually had a little bit less success against him. So yeah, Tovar, it's the Ezekiels at short. You just got to pick one between Duran and Tovar.
Yeah, Tovar hitting 9th, but you can kind of wrap that around if you want a little, at the top end of the Rockies order, or just kind of a one-off if you're going with some Phillies and want a one-off from the Rockies. So yeah, I like that. We had mentioned Tommy Edman, so he's shortstop eligible here, but he was one of your better plays for second base. But if you're playing him at second, then you can get one of these cheap guys in at short. I got to ask you about Casey Schmidt. This dude has been on fire ever since he got called up. He homered again last night. Obviously small sample size. He's a rookie. He'll eventually cool down, but I mean, going against Ryan Nelson and the D-backs tonight, I mean, he could stay hot, and he's still really cheap on DraftKings.
Yes, and to say he's been hitting well might be an understatement. I mean, we're talking 3 straight multi-hit games and a 4-hit outing. Ryan Nelson's not good when you look solely at the numbers. Lefties have had more success, but it's not like righties. Nelson's not shutting down righties by any means. Still a 288 average against 322 WOBA and an OPS nearing 780. So you can get to him. And, James talked about it this morning. Like, the Giants stack is interesting. Like, you can get Estrada. Do you believe Conforto can kind of bounce back a little bit? Lamont Wade just seems to get on base more often than he doesn't at this point. And then Schmidt I'm really surprised that the pricing hasn't caught up a little bit. Yeah. I mean, it's gone up 700 since he's come up, but I mean, look at those fantasy points numbers. Like, you could up his price by $1,000 from tonight, and he's still 2.5, 3.5 times return on investment. Like, he's just hitting the cover off the ball. And if you're stacking San Fran, he's one you got to put in there. So Schmidt's also a guy I really do like, because I just don't think Nelson's going to get it done tonight against the Giants.
Yeah, and Schmidt, 2,900 on FanDuel, so still cheap over there too. Both sites haven't really, maybe they're not trying to overreact, and maybe he has a bad game and it kind of brings the price down, but who knows? But yeah, he's a guy that's kind of like, and once you get guys that come up from the rookie, I mean, eventually they're going to cool off, but you kind of ride it until they don't. It's been kind of one of my mantras about whether it's props or fantasy or in season long fantasy. You ride a guy and then he'll start cooling down, but or maybe he won't. Who knows? By the way, in the chat we got Ice Through asking about stacking Braves versus Chris Bassett. Are you looking that route at all? We haven't gotten to outfielders yet, so Ronald Acuna, but any other Braves? We touched on Riley as an option earlier, but we haven't really actually talked about too many Braves hitters, from the position players against Bassett.
Yeah, I think mostly tonight with some of the Braves, I've kind of found them as adding them in and as one-offs if I can do it, or if I have the space, it's been like mini stacks. So like Riley is a guy that I'm looking at tonight. Maybe you can go like Riley and Acuna. When you look at Bassett's numbers, lefties have had more success than righties, and by a pretty sizable margin. So that's why I think at first base, if you're not going Goldie, you can go Olsen. So maybe you end up going Olsen-Riley. That could be something that you could look at doing. I think it's in play. I'm not a big Chris Bassett guy. Pitches to a lot of contact. I do think Atlanta can get the best of him. It's just when you look at some of the other games and pitching matchups, a lot of my stacks have come via Texas, have come via St. Louis, maybe even getting a little bit in the Colorado game that we're dealt with tonight. So I think if you are going to stack Braves, I'm not against it by any means. Olsen and Riley are the two I think that you have to include. Can you get away with not using Acuna? You could. It's very tough if you're going to put Olsen and Riley as the 2-3 guys and just leave out the leadoff guy. It's a very pricey stack when looking at it in that game. But I mean, Toronto's not a bad hitters park, so there's definitely some stuff to like there. But I think of Atlanta's bats, Olsen and Riley stand a little bit. Olsen stands above them all. And then that next tier down is like Riley. And then like the slightest sliver down a little bit more would be Ronald Acuna Jr.
Gotcha. Before we get to outfielders here, just got to say that fantasy football best ball season is here, and you can join a live draft and try to beat your favorite fantasy alarm analyst while talking about your picks and strategy live on Better Sports Network. Sign up for a live draft on the Fantasy Alarm Discord today. Remember, you must have a Fantasy Alarm subscription to join, so visit fantasyalarm.com for subscription options to jumpstart your dominance over the competition. And we mentioned earlier, but if you missed it or if you haven't yet, use promo code ALARM50 for at fantasyalarm.com to get access to all the all-pro packages, DFS playbooks, sports betting picks from Howard Bender, pumping those out every day, fantasy football draft stuff that we got going on. So yeah, go check that out. Alarm50 is the promo code at fantasyalarm.com. Let's get to some outfielders here now that we got through all the position players. Ohtani, Acuna, Judge back healthy now. Yordan Alvarez on a tear. Fernando Tatis, Mookie Betts, Bryce Harper in cores, Kyle Schwarber in cores. Where are you looking at with all these high-priced outfielders to prioritize maybe one of these guys or two?
Yeah, when looking at it, Gomber actually has reverse split, so I do think lefties are in play against Gomber. So you could look to Harper, could look to Schwarber. I'd probably prefer Harper to Schwarber if I'm being honest. Kyle Bradish has not been good, so Brian Reynolds could be in play if you want to go with a Pittsburgh stack, but they've been borderline Cleveland anemic the past couple of weeks as they're on quite a slide, which was ruining the high vibes I had with them going for a little bit. Really
started out so hot, but now it's like, all right, wait, actually they're the Pirates.
Yeah, Servo, I know. Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know you're a Pirates fan, but it was just funny watching that from afar. And it's like, wait, what's happening?
It wasn't funny. It wasn't funny watching it from afar. It was not, but Bradish hasn't been good of late. So you could look to a Pittsburgh bat. I will tell you, one of my favorite outfielders tonight, there's actually two, and they're not like really in this highest price tier, which actually works out quite well. We'll throw it out there. Byron Buxton's not one of them, but against a lefty, do have to consider him just because he is very good against lefties. I love Nick Castellanos tonight. In Colorado. I'm surprised. I mean, 52 is not cheap by any means, but we're talking those last 5 games. He's been very darn good. He is absolutely in a great spot. I just kind of talked about how Gomber's not good. You can get him with lefties, but you can also, get him with righties, obviously. And Castellanos, if I'm not mistaken, has the BVP numbers if you like BVP data. I know there's a lot of, there's some nuances that go with that. He's only 1 for 5 against Gomber, so it's not necessarily great, but against lefties this year, that's where it is. 343, 423 WOBA, and he's got 2 homers and 35 at bat. So I really do like Castellanos, and I think he's one of my preferred plays tonight. He's a must in any Philly stack, and he could be the one that if we don't necessarily go the Colorado route, he would be my one-off play from this game if we're going to look there. So Castellanos is a guy I really like tonight.
Yeah, he's a guy that's I think has really benefited from Bryce Harper returning to that lineup because he's hitting behind Harper.
Mm-hmm.
Harper's drawing walks and obviously Turner in front of him, but just like a lot more RBI opportunities for Castellanos, and it's just been really good hitter this year in general. So yeah, I like that call and definitely cheaper than like Harper, Schwarber, and Schwarber's kind of hit or miss to hit a homer or go 0 for 4. So so I like those options. I got to throw out Yoshida from Boston, Masataka Yoshida. He was actually one of my plays in the Underdog Fantasy, player props article that I put up earlier today because Wainwright, I mean, so his hitting streak came to an end, 16-game hitting streak for Yoshida. But I think he's going to get back on it. He's been 0 for the last 2 games, but I feel like he's going to get back on there in this, lefty hitter against Wainwright. And Wainwright's he worries me. I mean, he's always been a pitcher that's been a lot better at home than on the road. So whenever he's on the road, I just kind of like have my eye on the other offense. But the Red Sox here, we've talked about the Red Sox a few times as one of those possible stacks in this high scoring game. And Yoshida has been, on fire, just in general, like RBIs, runs scored. And he's been bouncing back between like hitting second, hitting fourth in this Red Sox lineup. So I do like him. I took his total bases. And if you're, you can look on DraftKings or whatever to take that if you're on underdog. But as a DFS play, do you like him, or is he maybe just a little too pricey for this slate?
Nope, I can get behind it. If you're going to attack Wainwright, you do it with the Boston left-handed bats. We talked about it a little bit with Devers. So like Jarren Duran, Yoshida, Devers, 3-man stack in Boston, or just Devers and Yoshida, you can definitely do it. If you pay down at other positions, you're going to have the money to pay up for some of these outfielders that you want. And it could be something too where if you expect ownership to be high on Castellanos and you want to kind of zig when others zag, go to Yoshida, same price. And it's maybe not as great of a hitter's haven as Colorado is, but it's definitely a good spot. Lefties in Boston are going to have success tonight against Wainwright.
Yeah. All right, cool. What about the going a little bit further down in the mid range of the outfielders? Who's your favorite mid range guy? Verdugo, as you mentioned, lefties against Wainwright. He's hitting a leadoff against Waino tonight, and he's at 4,900. But what about this like kind of 4K range? Who are you looking at? Who's your plays?
Yeah, down at 4,000, Lourdes Gurriel Jr. absolutely raking of late. He is raking at home, and when you look over his last 7 games, 478 average, 4 home runs. And I mean, look, he's got the 2 homers a couple nights ago, and now we've got doubles in back-to-back nights. A couple strikeouts. I'm not really concerned about those. He is too cheap for 4,000. If you're looking at stacking San Fran, he's the one you bring back from the Arizona side, and I think he's good enough that you can play him one-off tonight, and he's going to be just fine. He's been so good of late. I'm really surprised he's still hanging out at 4,000 because look at his price the past couple games. He's been pretty darn good. If I'm not mistaken, that price has gone down. So
yeah, is that 4,800 3 games ago, 4,400, 4,600, and now just at 4K. So it kind of seems like a mistake.
Yeah, and he's one you can play one-off. So he's actually the build that I did before we jumped on. He was a one-off play I had from that game. I didn't stack San Fran. I know James Grande is going to be a little upset, but Gurriel, I went with him one-off. So he's one I really like in that range. Again, lefties against Wainwright. Jarren Duran's right there at 4,000 too. If you like prefer him to Verdugo or just need to save a little bit of money, you can go with him. And then, they talked about him this morning. I've talked about it. Going against Waldichuk, Robbie Grossman should be hitting in the top third or at least the top half of that Texas lineup. So he could be a very cheap option if we want to go with him as well when we start formulating this lineup here.
Where's Grossman priced? I
just
see him
at
500. Wow.
Assuming he makes the lineup, which he should because it's against a lefty, he's in a really good spot. So he's a value play for us to use. Yeah.
All right. Any other cheap guys before we do try to make a lineup here for you?
Nope. Let's make the lineup. Let's have some fun with this because this is going to get interesting because I have some guys I want to throw in right away. Hopefully you have the same, and then it's just kind of filling in the cracks.
Yeah. Well, if you have any last minute questions for those watching and listening, go ask those away, and we'll get them answered within the last 5 minutes here so that we're live. But yeah. All right. Let's start with. Do you like starting with hitters or pitchers when making lineups?
Let's do pitchers. We're gonna have to make a decision between Burns and Gore, but I'm all in on putting Tyler Anderson in there and saving the money.
Yeah, let's do it. Why not? I'm with you on Anderson. Burns, I'll go Gore. I just his previous performance, like you were mentioning earlier, against the Mets, 10 Ks in that last matchup. I'm just kind of on that. So the Mets lineup is very hit or miss for me. It's just like they could either go off for 6 runs or just be held kind of scoreless through the first 7. So Gore could be one of those good options. I like that.
And then catching for now, let's put in Jonah Heim. If we have the money, we can look to go up to like a Will Smith type, but we're going to stack Texas probably. So we'll kind of have to see if we can do that. I don't mean to move right through this, but I'm locking in Goldschmidt at first base. I was actually going to have you do that first, but I was like, nah, let's go in order. Let's go with the pitcher. I was going to say just go throw in Goldschmidt and then we'll carry on from there.
That's fair.
But we'll do that. So now second base, I'll kind of put this one to you here. I do believe Tommy Edman does have that second base eligibility, or we can go cheaper with like a Luis Garcia type. Do you have any kind of hard?
I do like
here?
Luis Garcia. Yeah, as we were going through the show, I kind of talked myself more into Nats guys. First base, it's tough to like not play Goldschmidt and go down to like. But if you wanted one of those punt guys, was it Meneses or Dominic Smith, were like really cheap as options there if you wanted to pay up at other spots. But yeah, like Garcia is like a nice cheap option. You're hitting second in that Nats lineup, kind of a sneaky Nats lineup that can still put up runs even though they don't win as many games.
Yep.
Yeah, you like Garcia here?
Yeah, we can always pivot with Edman at short too, and still have our St. Louis stack and not be affected by it.
Third base, who's your top here?
All right.
This is the position you did not like, so
it is not. Yeah, it is not the position. I say let's lock in Josh Jung and then go right to shortstop and put in Tommy Edman.
Okay, let's do it. So we got 5K remaining for the last three outfield spots. That's
perfect.
Plenty of wiggle room here.
Okay, so my thoughts here. I know we're coming up on time a little bit, but I would look at Castellanos. That way we have some exposure to Coors. I would consider Lourdes Gurriel at 4,000, and then we have 58, but I think that's going to put us just shy of. We can actually probably bump up. What does Yoshida put us at? 52.
Yoshida,
leave about 600 out there.
Yeah, we got
leave Gurriel.
Left over is not terrible. You could go up from, if you wanted to put Edman at second, you could go up from short. Or vice
we were all value at short. So this, I guess, it comes back to the original question: Mackenzie Gore, Corbin Burns, because we do have enough to go to Burns.
Oh yeah, you could go right to Burns there.
I do like Gore though.
All right, let's put Burns in there for now. But if it's Gore, because we all got to wrap up here. But all right, yeah. Well, there's a lineup if you want to check that out. But you've heard our thoughts on it. Appreciate everyone watching and listening. Again, this is the Fantasy Alarm MLB DFS live show. We don't do it every day, but we as a channel and as a company do it every day with John and Pemba, who's getting married tomorrow, and James Grande. But yeah, appreciate everyone watching. Go check out the DFS playbook and tune back in on Monday as well as Pemba will be back from his wedding. Thanks, Colby. Appreciate it. Good stuff today, and we'll see you guys later. See ya.